Welcome, and thank you for joining SailPoint's Accelerator Pack demo. I'm Kira Hansel, and I'll be your moderator today. Joining me is Ashish, who is the Senior Product Manager here at SailPoint. And now, before we get started, I'd like to go over a few housekeeping items. All participants have been placed on mute during the presentation. If you have any questions, please submit them in the Q&A panel, and we'll answer them at the end during our Q&A session. And one other thing, the session will be recorded, and we will email you a link later with the recorded version. So now, without further ado, here is Ashish.
Thanks, Kira. Hi, guys. I'm excited to talk to you guys about the Accelerator Pack that we launched this year in August with 7.3. So before we get into the feature functionality, I wanted to lay the landscape, so to speak, in some of the challenges that you guys see today. The first one is that digital transformation is here. Whether we want to admit it or not, the number of applications that you guys are being asked to onboard is increasing at an exponential rate, and the level of complexity that these applications have leads to that as well, and businesses want to have that governance control, but at the same time they want ease in onboarding. In addition to that, I kind of highlighted these 2 points, but on top of that, what makes it really hard is, we don't have a lot of resources in terms of experienced personnel that can go and deploy these complex applications or integrate with these complex applications, and people who know all these variety of applications. So this is the problem that we face right now. So as a result of this, our focus has been on how do we make the deployment process to evolve and be better, so that we can show rapid business value to your end users, while minimizing the risk that is associated with onboarding all these applications, and making sure you're doing it in a consistent manner, so the security footprint that exists permeates across the organization in a consistent manner. So this is a quote from Gartner, where they're talking about identity governance, and I'm just going to read it out. Identity functionality must become much smarter, easy to deploy, and easy to update. It is not enough for an IAM system to have the necessary capabilities. It must be flexible platform that can evolve at the speed of business. So again, the key word over here is that it needs to be easy to deploy, and when you're dealing with complex applications like Oracle Financials or SAP, and on top of that you add cloud platform elements like AWS or Azure or Google Cloud, that all have different ways of dealing with account management and access management. Things are not that easy. So keeping that in mind, we're introducing the Accelerator Pack to specifically address some of those challenges. So I'm going to expand all of this out. So the main focus of Accelerator Pack was to really make it easy, so that you could have a business analyst sit across with an application owner or business owner, and kind of walk them through as they onboard an application, what are the things that they need, information that the IT operation team needs to know. Like, for example, what does your joiner, mover, leaver policy look like? What correlation rules do I need to worry about? How am I going to sync the attributes that are coming in from your application with other things that I already have within Identity IQ? Are there any native change detections that I need to worry about, where somebody might go in and and make changes on your application, and it could trigger a bunch of events within Identity IQ. So all of that is handled in this rapid application onboarding. In addition to that, we also have smart configurations, which allow you to apply global settings, across all the different applications, and allow you to dig a little bit deeper into lifecycle events if if there are any changes that you want to make on a global basis, or if you want to figure out what's going on. The last piece is the most interesting piece, because as we were developing this, one of the things that came across was that there wasn't an easy way to shut things down if your team finds out that somebody has been compromised or a certain section of your organization has been compromised. So the break glass operation is looking into things like that, where you want to suspend a single identity, or you want to suspend a population of identities, but you still want to enable the admin functionality. Think of them as kind of firefighters who are going in trying to figure out what the problem is, and once that problem has been fixed, restoring that access back to everybody. So now we're going to dive a little bit deeper into the first bucket, which is rapid application onboarding. As I talked about, and I'm going to be walking with you guys through a small demo on this. This is really focused on, how do I get an application into Identity IQ, but do it in a manner that is consistent with all the other applications that I've already onboarded, and I'm making sure that I'm applying consistent set of security controls, so to speak, across all those applications. There's a lot of features in here. Aggregation is something I touched on, doing an automated provisioning workflow. So we give you out of the box somewhere ranging between 50 to 30 choices on joiner and lever especially. So again, it kind of warrants the conversation as your business analyst is sitting down with the application owner or the business owner. If their choice is not reflected in that list of 15 to 30, and it warrants that discussion as to, you're falling outside best practices. What is, is this a requirement? Is this super important? Let me understand what is the business driver behind all of this. And it changes the conversation that you guys have been having as an IGA operations team with your business. Instead of being a requirement gatherer, you can act more as a consultant, kind of guiding them in terms of, what are the best practices for onboarding their application into Identity IQ. And the last thing that I want to touch on this, the biggest benefit of doing this and things in this manner is that onboarding an application usually used to take anywhere from 40 to 80 hours, now man-hours, and that can now be drastically reduced, somewhere between 10 to 15 hours. So you're seeing a big decrease. There's a 65 to 70% cost savings that you get. Phase one, and this is typically, targeted toward phase one deployments. Phase one, which usually would take anywhere from, on an average around 6 months, and cost somewhere around, and I'm throwing, ballpark figures over here, but it would cost somewhere between 350 to 500K, and sometimes depending on the complexity even more. And now all of that can be reduced drastically, and we're you're like getting a savings of somewhere around 65% on the phase one by using Accelerator Pack. Next, we're going to talk about smart configuration. This is where, again, instead of having a skilled IT person going in and using using Bean Shell in order to figure out, what the lifecycle events should be. This is where you can use a business analyst to take on more technical tasks. So if they're dealing with configuring a life cycle or integrating with a ticketing system like ServiceNow, all of that can be done now through UI, and I'll be walking you guys through a demo of all these features. And again, the key focus for the Accelerator Pack has been to significantly accelerate, the time that it takes in order to deploy and configure some of these things. And again, is to accelerate the value that you provide to your business, and especially for for phase one deployments where you're dealing with, business applications. This really accelerates and shows you a lot of value over there. The last piece that I want to spend some time talking about is the, break glass operation. And this is the one that customers who are currently using it and some of the customers that we've talked to have expressed a lot of interest in, which is the ability to be able to handle, security breaches or events like that in a quick manner. So being able to suspend all access, restore all access, and being able to correct the access privileges it becomes really, really critical when you've been compromised. So now we're going to switch to a demonstration. So if you can just bear with me as I switch screens. So I'm going to log in as the administrator over here, but I mean it could be a business analyst as well. So on my quick links, I would drop down over here, and under Rapid Application Onboarding, I would select Self-Service Onboarding. Just give me a second. I'm having some issues with. Okay, so over here, I would go in and I would select my application. So I'm going to select this application over here. And the first thing that we're doing on the screen is really aggregating and providing correlation information in terms of, how do I define, what an identity attribute in this application means. And in addition to that, we're answering questions like, is this a business application or is it a platform? So that way we can tag and classify, the access. So over here, sorry, I apologize. So over here, we're really classifying So over here, we're really classifying, data based on access accounts and applications. So I have the ability to tag, things that are coming in from this application, whether they're privileged or whether they're service accounts, and if there's some birthright entitlement as well, I can classify all of that. So I'm doing all this work beforehand, so that at the time of aggregation, it just becomes easier for me to classify all of this and pull that in. And again, you don't need Bean Shell to define all of this. This is all done through the UI. If there are things that fall outside of this, you can handle exceptions as well. So you can use, Java regular expressions in order to extend this if you wanted to do that. Again, the goal on this is to really simplify things and provide guardrails so that when the business analyst is having conversations with the business owner, they can really center the conversation on key critical things. The next screen is Joiner. This is where you can define, the Joiner policies. You also do have a staging option. So over here, you can define these policies in your dev or QA environment and check everything out. So you can do activate joiner. You can restore only primary account on rehire. So if somebody has been terminated and they get hired again, this would just restore their primary account. The birthright, population, and role, these are assigned based on, so for example, if somebody, you might have a certain amount of people who need access to a group in AD or to have an AD account created before, before they're onboarded. So this is where you can define all of that, and then there would be birthright roles that are associated at that point. In addition to that, you have a lot of rehire options. So there's a bunch of things that you can do, like enable immediately, or you can do just unlock and reset. So there are a lot of choices that are provided to you over here. This option over here, the reverse lever hire, we've seen this a lot in healthcare. So for example, if if a clinician leaves a hospital, but they're leaving one hospital and they're going to another hospital, it becomes a scenario where they're kind of rehired immediately. So you want to be able to handle that scenario. You don't want to have doctors waiting to get access into Epic. So we can handle all of those scenarios. And again, a lot of this is built in, so you have a lot of choices, from the UI itself. In addition to that, if there are any instructions that, the application owner wants the user to know, you can put all of those instructions over here. This also supports velocity expressions. So again, you can tailor everything right over here as you're talking to the business owner, and this will all go into the email templates and get sent out, whenever the joiner event happens. On lever, there's again a lot of options over here. We have do nothing as standard out of the box, but over here, this is where there's a lot of richness in terms of choices. You can disable and remove accounts. You can disable and remove entitlements. This list keeps on going. You have around I think 30 options to select from. And this should meet, again, 80 to 90% of the use cases that are out there. And again, if you're a business owner or application owner saying this doesn't really meet the criteria, you can still address that outside of this. But again, it warrants that conversation, what is not being met in these use cases, and is it truly important? And again, as you see, this is a very exhaustive list of things that we have seen common across, different customers that we that have deployed Identity IQ across the different verticals. So I'm fairly confident that a lot of your lever options should be handled within this dropdown. In addition to that, again, if there's if there's any exceptions, you can handle this. Or there might, in some cases, there are scenarios where people don't want, even if somebody leaves, they don't want that entitlement to be removed. So we do handle that as well. So you can specify the operation, you can specify the value, and we'll make sure that during this event that that action doesn't transpire. The next event is mover, and usually, typically, for mover, people are more focused on joiner and lever, and they like to do mover a little bit later in the maturity cycle. But over here, again, you have a lot of options in terms of doing either do nothing or doing a manager certification. And in addition to that, we also take care of before mover options. So for example, if somebody is going from one AD domain to another, well, that LDAP account or that AD account needs to be moved before they can actually do the move. So those things are handled over here as well. In addition to that, there's an automated allow exception account revocation that happens, and you have, 3 options available over here. So this option is executed as part of the removal of access that was allowed by a manager. So this really plays a lot with contractors. If you allowed them to have access to something for, let's say, 30 days, and you forget, this makes sure that we either disable it or delete it automatically. Or you can do nothing. In which case, if you set a sunset date, Identity IQ will automatically delete that account. The next area is around attribute synchronization. So this is more focused on, lifecycle event and staging. This is where you can create provisioning policies and handle multi-account sync as well. So you can choose to sync only, primary accounts, and you can do create provisioning policy for synchronization as well. And this is where you specify your attributes as well as your target attributes. The next screen is around approvals. So this is where you would specify, your first level business approvers, second level business approvers. The request form and request form role is to handle scenarios where, as part of the approval process, you might want a provisioning policy, or in order to prevent an explosion of roles, you might want to create a form that you can insert over here that allows the approver to say that, okay, as part of this access request, they also get access to X, Y, and Z. That might be done on a more ad hoc basis, depending on what the organization rules are around that. In addition to that, we also handle new account dependency entitlements. So this is where you can specify your dependency application, and I can specify Active Directory, and then say the entitlements that would depend on that would be benefits, so that when this application is onboarded, then I know that there's a dependency to this application and entitlement as well. So this will really reflect at times of access requests and certifications. The next area is around ticket integration. So if you're doing ticket integration with ServiceNow, BMC Remedy, or HP, Service Desk, this is where you can specify any group names that need to be assigned with this application. You can specify the wait time and then the maximum status check as well. So again, all of that is part of the application onboarding. And the last page is around provisioning. So this is where you can specify how many times you want to retry, what those retryable errors are going to be, how many, what's the waiting time that you want to have between retries, and soft delete is basically saying that, if a revocation happens, I want that to disable operations or disable that thing as opposed to deleting that. So in some scenarios, you want to be able to disable on certain applications where there might be sensitive information, or because of regulation and demands that it be disabled and not deleted for audit reasons, you can enable that as well. So that's the complete flow of onboarding an application. And the moment you hit next, it'll it'll go in and set up the template. And then once you aggregate this information, this will show up in access request and certification if it's been configured to do so. I'm going to quickly switch and talk to you guys about Smart Setup. So this is where you can go in and define your global settings, and this decides, on the form that I was showing you for application onboarding, what shows up and what doesn't show up, and these are the default values that get assigned. I'm going to choose a one-page layout just so that I can show you guys everything in one go. The wizard layout is much better the first time you do it. So over here, you can, there's a bunch of things defined for operations where they can come in and they can define where the error notifications are going to go to. If you're doing any staging, where those approvals are going to go, what the email notifications are going to look like. So this is where all the email templates get defined. And in addition to that, we also give you a lot of flexibility in terms of approvals for access and accounts. Do you want to enable electronic signature? Yes or no? Do you want first level account split? Do you want first level entitlement split? So all of those things can be defined at a global level, and they will show up for each application. And again, these are all global settings. The thing that I'm going to move to quickly, because we've kind of gone over this, these are all, again, things that you've seen in the form, is this self-service onboarding wizard. So over here, you can decide, what are the things you want to enable for your business analysts. So you might come in over here and say that, okay, I'm not... I don't want my business analyst to worry about, privileged account or ticket integration and everything else they can do. So whenever you save this, all applications will be will show up like that. And then if there's certain applications that you just want to exclude from aggregation, disable or lock, you can specify them over here. So all of these features are built in and make it a lot easier for your business analyst to sit down and configure and onboard applications a lot easier. So the other part of the global definition is the lifecycle triggers. So over here, I can look at, for example, if I were to look at a joiner lifecycle event, I can see all the different all the different global settings that have been defined. So if I'm triggering on an identity attribute, there's an implicit joiner where I'm ignoring the old values and I'm just looking at the new values. And if there's an identity population defined, then I'm ignoring the old values. So again, there's if you wanted to go and fiddle with it or add to that, there's a lot of capability for a business analyst to be able to go in and do that. And this would be across all the lifecycle events, that I showed you guys earlier. So next, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about break glass operation. The first one we're going to go with is terminating somebody's access. Over here you can select multiple identities, or you can select a single identity. Let's say I want to terminate Aaron. I can specify the reason. All the information is over here, and once I click this button, that event, the lever event, will start for Aaron, and his access will get removed. And let's say there was a mistake made where HR accidentally made a mistake, and somebody somebody was fired that they were not, or we fired somebody but we really need him back and we need to get him back and up and running as soon as possible. So again, I can come in and I don't have any identity over here, but over here I could come in and choose Aaron, and I would give the reason, and I would go the next. Sorry, this is a demo environment. So, but over here you would, once you've filled out this information and gone to the next field, you would select whether you wanted to restore all their access, just their birthright access. All that capability would be at your fingertips for the operations team to go do that. And the last one is around, processing requests. So over here, if I, if I want to do, a rehire, or let's say a leaver, I can specify, whatever my reasons are, go to the next screen, and this confirms everything, and this will process this identity event. So this comes really, really handful if you're doing batch operations, and you can do things in a quick and easy manner. And again, these are quick and easy ways for your business analyst to go in and look at things. It seems that we have some questions, so I'll pause.
Yes. Pull this up. Eric wanted to know, speaking to what you were saying about earlier, is that because you're saving a snapshot of their access when the termination was done?
So, so that's a great question. As long as you are doing aggregation and you have, I think there's certain features that have to be enabled that Accelerator Pack does. Snapshot is one of them, but we're essentially keeping tabs in the database of what the access was, and we can restore that. Now, if within the policy you say that terminate or delete that identity immediately, and we have to go in and remove all instances of it, then it becomes really hard to restore that access, because there's nothing for us to go back to. But we definitely do use snapshots in order to get a profile of what that access looks like.
Okay, and then another question we've had. In the first screen, you selected an application from a drop-down. Does that mean the application object needs to be created manually before using the Accelerator pack?
Yes. Before the application shows up over here, you would have to go into applications, define the application, define the schema, define the URL, username, password, all of that. So once the aggregation is done, it'll show up over here, and then you can go in and do the configuration.
Okay, another question. How does the Accelerator pack determine an account as primary account shown during the attribute sync?
So that's a great question. What we recommend, let me go back to the screen so that I can. So over here, you can specify, there are usually some, in terms of best practices, there are usually some indicators of what is a primary account. You could have a set of, it could always be, the person's first name, or there could be some digits or characters that specify that that is a primary account, as opposed to a privileged account or a service account. So this is where you can go in and specify that. So you're really specifying your privileged and service accounts, and then if you have multiple basic accounts, then it would depend on what your particular policy is in terms of how you're classifying that. But you can set that up easily over here.
Yeah. All right, thank you. Another question. How does the self-service flow support the work required to actually set up the aggregation for sources that aren't LDAP, flat file aggregation, for example?
Could you repeat that question? Sorry.
How does the self-service flow support the work required to actually set up the aggregation for sources that aren't LDAP, flat file aggregation, for example?
Oh, okay. So for Accelerator pack, the connector is not that important over here. That's why that work is kind of done before, as I mentioned. Before you get to the screen, you would have to go in. Into the application definition. You'd have to create, a new application, and over here you're specifying, that it's going to be a delimited file, flat file, and you would have to do an aggregation on that application. And once that is done, it'll then show up over here on this list. And after that, you're just applying, correlation rules. While it's called aggregation, this is more to do with applying correlation rules and really classifying your access and your accounts so that it becomes easier for users when they're requesting access, certifying access, and you're applying a consistent classification across your organization. So again, a best practice more than anything else.
Thank you. Does this tie to the SAP info at all? If not, how does it ensure that the SAP data changes do not override the emergency terminate action?
I don't have an answer for that. That is one of the questions that I'm going to have to follow up. We'll take note of that question, and unfortunately, I don't have an answer for that one.
Okay. Can you describe again what a business application is? Does the business application need to have a connector, or can it rely on another application connector, i.e. Active Directory?
Yeah, so great question. I didn't, again, this is a demo environment, so it didn't show up over here, but, For example, if you have apps that are connected to connected by AD, then it can be handled. So typically what we consider business applications, are applications that businesses is using, like Salesforce, Concur. Those are considered business applications. Now, they're going to have their own connector because, we have connectors for Concur, for Salesforce, and all that kind of stuff. But if you're talking about where they're authenticated or authorized through AD, that is definitely something that the Accelerator Pack will handle as well.
Okay, thank you. Nicholas wants to know why in 7.3 do we still need to choose identities from a custom workflow using 6.3 identity selection screen instead of the new 7.3 access request one? And more importantly, is that going to change at some point?
Great question. So since 7.0, we've been working on changing our pages and making it more responsive. And our focus since 7.0 has been on end user pages. As we keep on going deeper and deeper into this exercise, we will be changing that and making it more responsive so the look and feel will resemble what you see in terms of a managed identity flow or an access request flow as opposed to what you see on the identity warehouse. But that's the future direction that we're headed in.
Thank you. Another question, is it a new application that should be installed on Identity IQ, or is it a new capability coming from the new IQ app?
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Is this a new application that should be installed on Identity IQ, or is it new capabilities coming from the IQ app?
Again, a good question. This is something that you would be getting with for new customers. This would be part of the Base Plus SKU that is bundled in with Identity IQ. For current customers, this would be a separate licensed module that they would have to install separately. And it functions and it works directly with Identity IQ once it is installed.
Thank you. Is there any education documents about the Accelerator Pack?
Yes, so we do have a training course available on as part of our training university training department. There's a bunch of courses that are available. I don't know whether I know there's some available online, but I don't know whether between whether they're taught at a location versus online, what that spread is. But yes, we do have a lot of material available to get trained on using the Accelerator Pack. There's a lot of information available on Compass that talks about what the Accelerator Pack does as well.
Thank you. Another question from Benjamin. Account/group aggregation is really needed before configuring the Accelerator Pack. Why?
I don't think I understand the question, mainly because the main thing that we require before configuring the Accelerator Pack is that we can connect to that application, and so this is where you're going in and essentially, as I talked about earlier, you would go in, you would specify the name, you'd specify the owner, you would select your connector. Once you have selected your connector, the only other thing that we require would be, whatever the file path is and this part, and maybe some level of basic schema if you have it, but that's not required. It's just basically connecting to that application and looking at that data so that then we can apply the correlation rules and the policies and all that kind of stuff on to that application.
Right, thank you. Another question we got, how does the Accelerator Pack behave in an existing IIQ deployment where more or less 2,000 apps are onboarded already? Can the pack be used to configure them if required in future?
Great question. Yes. So the Accelerator Pack will work with your existing applications. If you want to onboard new applications, you can do that. If you want to look at existing applications and modify, the workflows and do some consistency around that, you can definitely do that.
Another question I got, how does the how does the application onboarding work with an application already configured?
So, so in terms of application onboarding, once you go over here, if I were to select an application that is already onboarded, majority of this stuff will already be filled out, but you can go in over here and change those values, or if things are not filled out, you can you can define those. So what happens usually in existing applications, you most likely will not have done any kind of data classification in terms of defining what is it, what does a privileged account look like? What does a service account look like? What does the birthright entitlement look like? Those are the things that if you're a mature customer and been using it for some time, you probably haven't gone and done the due diligence. So this kind of helps you go back and apply those principles to those existing applications.
All right, we're just going to get to a couple more questions. We'll let you finish up and see sometime at the end. If you already have configured applications, what happens if you use the Accelerator Pack? I know you kind of touched on that earlier, but...
Yeah, if you already have configured applications and you want to use Accelerator Pack, I mean, if you have some applications that have that were onboarded prior to Accelerator Pack, and you have some applications that are onboarded after Accelerator Pack, I mean, it's not going to impact the existing applications that are onboarded at all.
Okay, one last question. Can we customize the Accelerator Pack, example, workflows, forms, options?
Yes, you can. As I stated earlier, we provide you with a lot of options, but if you don't want to go with the options that are currently there, you can definitely make your own Java rules and extend Accelerator Pack that way.
Thank you. All right. So if you guys have any more questions, please put them in the Q&A box, and we'll let Ashish just finish up, and we'll get to those in a minute.
Give me 1 second. I got to switch back to the PowerPoint. So, now that we've seen what the Accelerator Pack does, I just want to quickly take a minute to talk about some of the benefits of the Accelerator Pack. The first one is fairly obvious, that it really eliminates the need to code and to code custom workflows. It changes, the discussion that you have with your business team and allows you to be more consultative rather than, gathering requirements. And by doing all of this, by having, a predefined lane, so to speak, where you're engaging with your business owners, it really reduces the time and cost of deploying and onboarding these applications, by 50 to 60%. And again, you're using a different skill set. So instead of relying on an experienced IT personnel in order to go and do all of these things, you can use a business analyst in order to do some of this tactical stuff, so that your precious resource of experienced IT can actually work on more strategic stuff. And again, this is going to be upgrade friendly. So, right now we have Accelerator pack for both 7.3 and 7.2, and as we continue forward, we're going to keep on ensuring that it is compatible from one release to the other. In terms of support and everything, it would work just like it does with Identity IQ. So if I want to leave you with anything about Accelerator Pack, it's these three things. The first is we've taken 20 years of experience of our professional services team, looked at everything that they've done across, various deployments, talked to our partner community, looked at the various deployments that they've done, and really narrowed down some of the best practices that we see. And this will help guide you on how to optimally use Identity IQ in order to get the optimal identity governance. The second thing, it's really cost effective. So especially when you're looking for phase one deployments, where you want to onboard business applications really quickly, get the businesses up and running, show value to your stakeholders. Accelerator Pack, it becomes really crucial because it goes back to the third point. It's time to value. Instead of taking an average of 6 months that it takes in order to onboard applications in phase one, we're cutting that time down to 2 to 3 months, and your end users are engaging and using Identity IQ so you can get quicker feedback and better value, and show your stakeholders that the decision that they made in terms of going with Identity IQ for identity governance is paying off in the number of provisionings, deprovisionings, access requests, and all that stuff that are starting to happen much earlier than planned. So again, those are the big three things that Accelerator Pack brings to the table, so to speak. So I know we covered some Q&A, but I just wanted to take a quick pause and see if there were any additional questions that I could answer before we call it a day.
Well, not really a question, but Frank was a bit surprised to hear that the Accelerator Pack is supported by 7.2.
Yeah, that just recently came out. I think the announcement was made last week, but we have Accelerator Pack version 2.0 that is available for 7.2.
All right, do you have any other last-minute questions? All right, guys. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today.
I think there was one question that Eric had.
Oh.
So I think Eric had a question in terms of the cost, whether so there's a single fee for Accelerator Pack, and it really depends on the number of users. Like I said, if you're a new user, it's it's part of the Base Plus offering that we have. If you guys want to understand what the cost would be for you, I would suggest that you reach out to your customer success manager, and they can, they can talk to you. It's a very simple two-tier cost structure, and they can kind of explain that to you.
All right, and then one last quick question. Since configurations are updated by business analysts, do we have options to stage and review before the configurations are made?
Yes, you do have the ability, and we suggest that you do that in the dev environment. I mean, like, you can set that up. So that's part of the smart configuration that that I walked you guys through earlier.
All right, and then any news on the new AAD connector?
I don't have any information. I don't have any information. That's something that we're going to have to get back to you on.
All right, and then one last question, then we're going to wrap it up, guys. How does the source control of Accelerator configure? How are the source controls of the Accelerator pack configurations maintained?
Yeah, I need a little bit more clarification. Can we take that discussion online if that's okay? Because I think that that might be a longer discussion than we have time for.
All right. Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today and give a special thanks to Ashish for presenting and demoing the Accelerator pack. I just want to remind everyone that this has been recorded, and we will be sending you a link of the recording later this week. Well, with that, I just want to say thank you, and I hope everyone has a great day. Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you.
All right, bye.
Thank you, guys. Bye.